signs that you are in an enlightened state without realizing it. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Have you ever wondered what enlightenment is? Is it a sacred state reserved only for long-time practitioners or wise sages who have renounced everything to live in seclusion? We often think of enlightenment as something distant, unattainable, and exclusive to extraordinary individuals. But perhaps reality is different. Sometimes, you may have experienced subtle signs of enlightenment without even knowing it. It could be during a quiet afternoon when you immerse yourself in nature, or in moments when you face life's upheavals with unprecedented calmness. Sometimes, enlightenment doesn't arrive like a thunderous storm, but rather like a gentle breeze brushing your mind, awakening you, and allowing you to see the world through fresh eyes. You accept the unchangeable with serenity. Accepting the unchangeable is one of the first and most important signs of enlightenment. To truly grasp and deeply analyze this aspect, we need to start by exploring the nature of life and human psychology as it interacts with external factors. Impermanence, the nature of all things. In Eastern philosophy, especially Buddhism, the concept of impermanence is a core element. Impermanence means that everything in life is subject to change. Nothing is permanent. From the small events of daily life to major transformations such as birth and death, everything follows the cycle of arising, staying, changing, and ceasing. This means that no matter how hard we try, there will always be things beyond our control. However, in daily life, most people struggle to accept this impermanence. When faced with change, especially negative events such as loss, failure, or undesirable circumstances, people often react with resistance, anger, or suffering. This isn't because humans are weak, but because their minds inherently crave safety and stability. The psychology of seeking stability. Human psychology tends to seek stability and control. We strive to maintain what we love and avoid what we fear. When we fail to do so, feelings of helplessness arise. Enlightenment is not a state of emotional detachment, but rather a profound understanding of the impermanence of life. An enlightened person no longer struggles against what is beyond their control. They do not suppress emotions or resist reality. Instead, they accept everything as it is with a peaceful heart. The ancients once said, "Suffering does not arise from circumstances, but from resisting circumstances." This is the crux of the matter. Pain does not originate from the events themselves, but from how we react to them. For instance, imagine someone loses their beloved job. This is undoubtedly a challenging event. However, the person's suffering doesn't only stem from the loss, but also from unmet thoughts and expectations. Why did this happen to me? I did everything to prevent this. Through understanding and acceptance, one can break free from such patterns of suffering and begin to live in harmony with the flow of life. This is not how my life should be. When we resist reality, we create a gap between our desires and the actual circumstances of life. This gap becomes the root of suffering. People often want something different from what is happening, and when that desire is unmet, they feel powerless and in pain. Meanwhile, the enlightened understand that fighting reality never brings peace. They don't try to change what has already happened or what cannot be changed. Instead, they accept that life unfolds in its own way, with constant changes, and that everything happens for a reason and has its consequences. This doesn't mean that enlightened individuals surrender completely or become passive. They still act, live, and strive, but they understand that some things are beyond their control, and the only thing they can truly control is their response to life's events. When someone reaches enlightenment, they no longer react intensely to unexpected events or difficulties. Instead of falling into anxiety, anger, or despair, they face these challenges with composure. This calmness is not a sign of indifference or lack of feeling, but a result of deep understanding of life's nature. Imagine losing a loved one. In such a situation, an ordinary person might be overwhelmed by pain, regret, and hopelessness. They might blame themselves or life for not being able to keep their loved one with them. However, an enlightened person experiences the pain but does not let it dominate their soul. They understand that life is impermanent, that death is an inevitable part of the life cycle, and that resisting this reality only leads to more suffering. They accept the pain as a part of life. In this acceptance, they find peace. They may grieve, but they do not allow sorrow to completely control their emotions and actions. By accepting, they maintain inner peace even in the face of significant loss. A common misconception about enlightenment is the belief that enlightened individuals completely renounce everything, that they give up on life, abandon all desires, and become indifferent to the world. This is not true. Enlightenment is not about giving up everything, but about embracing everything with understanding and complete acceptance. Enlightened individuals do not forsake life or deny their emotions. Rather, they live fully in each moment without being bound by expectations or desires. When something undesirable happens, they accept it with serenity and compassion instead of trying to change or resist it. Imagine standing before a vast ocean. Waves continuously crash onto the shore, ceaseless and unstoppable. You cannot control the ocean or stop the waves. The only thing you can do is accept them, understanding that the waves are a part of the ocean. Instead of trying to change them, you learn to live in harmony with them. Enlightened individuals are much the same. They do not attempt to change what cannot be changed, but instead harmonize with reality and embrace life with equanimity. In this acceptance, they find freedom and inner peace. Signs that you are less engaged with negative emotions. One significant indicator that you may have reached enlightenment without even realizing it is the ability to be less caught up in negative emotions. To understand this sign deeply, we need to explore human psychology when dealing with emotions, the role of negative emotions in life, and how enlightened individuals transcend them. The nature of negative emotions. Humans are emotional beings, experiencing everything from positive emotions like joy and happiness to negative ones like anger, resentment, envy, and sorrow. These emotions are an inseparable part of life. In psychology, negative emotions play an important role in protecting humans from threats or motivating them to act when faced with danger. For example, fear can make you alert to surrounding dangers, and anger can be a way to respond to infringements on your rights or dignity. However, when people fail to control their negative emotions, these feelings become a mental burden. Unenlightened individuals often let these emotions dominate their lives. They may easily lose their temper, allowing negative emotions to drive them into fits of rage or leave them feeling lost in life. Jealousy, anger, and hatred can consume their soul, trapping them in a cycle of suffering created by their own emotions. For the enlightened, however, they are no longer swept away by such emotions. This does not mean they no longer feel emotions, but rather that they know how to observe them without being controlled. This is the key difference between ordinary people and those who have achieved enlightenment. Ancient sages have likened emotions to passing clouds, while the mind is the calm sky. The enlightened recognize that both negative and positive emotions are temporary. Like fleeting clouds, emotions appear and disappear, never lasting forever. Observing emotions without attachment. With this understanding, the enlightened can observe their emotions objectively, rather than being carried away by them. Imagine facing a situation that used to make you angry or sad. An ordinary person might immediately react by yelling, arguing, or holding on to their anger. But when you achieve enlightenment, you can recognize the emotion before it controls your actions. Instead of reacting immediately, you might pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, why am I feeling angry? How long will this emotion last? Is it truly helpful in this situation? The enlightened do not react, they respond. Instead of acting based on immediate emotions, they choose a calmer and more appropriate response grounded in understanding and empathy. This ability comes from realizing that negative emotions are just a small part of their overall mental state, and they do not allow these emotions to completely dictate their being. Emotions and the ego. To delve deeper into the relationship between negative emotions and enlightenment, we must examine the connection between emotions and the ego. The self consists of thoughts and emotions that we identify as me. Negative emotions often stem from perceived threats to the ego, when we feel disrespected, when we don't achieve what we want, or when others have things we lack. For example, when you feel jealous of someone else's success, it's not because you truly dislike that person, but because your ego feels threatened. Your ego wants you to be more successful and better, and when this doesn't happen, it triggers negative emotions like jealousy and resentment. This understanding of the ego and its influence on emotions is a vital step toward transcending negative feelings and reaching enlightenment. The enlightened recognize that the ego is the root of most negative emotions. They understand that feelings of anger, jealousy, and hatred stem from the ego's desire to control and assert itself. When a person achieves enlightenment, they are no longer governed by the ego. Instead of trying to control everything around them, they let go of control and accept things as they are. Think of a river. When you try to hold water in your hands, it flows through your fingers and you cannot grasp it. But when you let the water flow freely, the river continues to run naturally. Emotions are the same. When you try to control or suppress emotions, they grow stronger. But when you let go and allow emotions to come and go naturally, you realize they are not as powerful as you thought. One of the most common negative emotions is anger. Anger can be seen as a fire that burns the soul, clouding clear judgment and leading to actions one may regret later. When you are angry, your mind is overshadowed by an ego that feels hurt or unfulfilled. However, the enlightened observe anger objectively. They know that anger is merely a natural reaction of the mind, and the important thing is not to let it take over. When feeling angry, they pause, breathe, and ask themselves, where does this anger come from? Is it truly necessary? Does it help solve the problem, or does it worsen the situation? A famous story about the Buddha illustrates this. Once, a man came to the Buddha and insulted him with hateful words. Instead of becoming angry or retaliating, the Buddha smiled calmly and asked, if someone gives a gift but it is not accepted, to whom does the gift belong? The man, confused, replied, of course, it belongs to the giver. The Buddha said, likewise, I do not accept your insults. They remain with you. This story shows that the enlightened do not let external negativity disturb their state of mind. They maintain their equanimity and refuse to let others' words or actions provoke negative emotions within them. Sign 3. You feel a deep connection with others and the world. Another significant sign that you may have reached enlightenment without realizing it is a profound sense of connection with others and the world around you. This is a state where you no longer see yourself as separate from everything, but as part of a greater whole. This realization brings empathy, love, and understanding. To explore this sign further, we will examine the meaning of connection, how enlightenment frees us from the sense of separation, and how this state leads to love and peace. Before enlightenment, most people live with a sense of separation from the world around them. We often see ourselves as isolated individuals, completely distinct from others and nature. This is evident in the way we distinguish between me and them, between mine and not mine. The ego dominates the mind, causing us to prioritize ourselves over others and view others as strangers or even adversaries. This sense of separation is the source of much suffering. When we feel alone, misunderstood, or disconnected from others, we are prone to loneliness, fear, and doubt. The ego builds a wall between us and the world, causing us to feel constantly threatened by everything outside ourselves. This is the root of conflict, envy, and isolation. However, when you achieve enlightenment, this wall of separation collapses. You no longer view the world through a lens of division and opposition, but instead feel a sense of connection and unity with everything. One of the core aspects of enlightenment is the dissolution of the ego, or at least a significant reduction in its influence on life. When the ego is pushed back, individuals no longer feel the need to protect themselves against others or the world. They realize that separation is merely an illusion created by the mind. In Buddhist philosophy and many other spiritual traditions, there is a belief that all beings are interconnected through a shared energy. This connection is not just physical, but also spiritual and conscious. The ancients once said, all living beings share the same breath. This means that we are not separate entities, but are all part of one unified existence, one shared essence. When this realization dawns, one feels a profound connection with everyone and everything. The enlightened experience this directly. They do not merely understand it as a concept taught through words, but deeply feel this unity with all things in every moment. This leads to a profound transformation in how they interact with the world. When you feel that you are part of the world, empathy and understanding naturally arise. Instead of focusing solely on personal gain, you begin to care more about others. You understand that the pain of others is also your pain, and that their joy is your joy. The enlightened no longer see others as strangers or adversaries. They realize that their actions not only affect themselves, but also influence everyone else. They perceive life as an intricate web of connections where every action impacts the whole. From this understanding, compassion and kindness grow deeply. Imagine one day walking down the street and seeing a stranger in distress. Instead of feeling indifferent or detached, you sense their pain as if it were your own. Compassion naturally wells up, and you want to help, not for any reason but out of pure love. This is a manifestation of enlightenment, when the ego is no longer at the center of life, and love becomes the primary motivation guiding your actions. The enlightened not only feel connected to other people, but also experience a profound relationship with nature and all living things. They see life in every leaf, every bird, and every river. Everything around them is no longer viewed as inanimate objects, but as parts of a vibrant, interconnected whole. In many spiritual philosophies, nature is regarded as a manifestation of sacred life. When you are enlightened, you can sense this life in everything. You no longer see nature as something to exploit or conquer, but as a part of yourself, something to protect and cherish. This connection with nature also helps the enlightened find inner peace. When you realize that you are part of the vast universe, you no longer feel small or powerless. On the contrary, you recognize your role in the greater whole, allowing you to live more harmoniously with the natural world. One of the most profound impacts of feeling deeply connected is the ability to transcend division and judgment. When you see yourself as part of a greater whole, external differences such as skin color, religion, social class, or status no longer hold significant importance. These factors become secondary because at a deeper level, you realize that we are all the same. We are all human, with similar emotions, pain, and joy. The enlightened do not judge others based on appearances or societal standards. They do not look down on the poor, envy the rich, or discriminate against someone simply because they hold different beliefs. Instead, they approach everyone with compassion and understanding. The ancients said, "See others as you see yourself." The enlightened not only understand this saying, but also live by it. They recognize that every action or word from others stems from circumstances, experiences, and personal suffering. Instead of reacting with anger or contempt, they respond with empathy and compassion. A typical example is in situations where others might react strongly with judgment or criticism. The enlightened remain calm. They understand that everyone has their own journey, and judgment only fosters division. They embrace differences and seek harmony instead of opposition. When you feel connected to others and the world, peace naturally arises in your heart. You no longer feel alone or lost in life. Instead, you sense support and love from everything around you. Inner peace comes from realizing that you are not an isolated individual, but a part of something larger, part of the universe. Living fully in the present. Another profound sign that you may have reached enlightenment, perhaps without realizing it, is the ability to live fully in the present moment. This is not just about enjoying everyday moments, but a deep state of mindfulness, where you are entirely engaged with the present without being distracted by the past or future. This ability not only brings inner peace, but also enables you to face life with clarity, freedom, and calm. Humans often tend to live in two extremes, either dwelling on the past with regrets or worrying about the future with uncertainty. This is a natural response of the mind, as we constantly seek to understand and predict what has happened or will happen to adapt or avoid undesirable outcomes. However, this tendency creates a paradox. The more we dwell on the past and future, the less we live in the present, the only moment that truly exists. The past is nothing but unchangeable memories, and the future is only a projection of possibilities yet to occur. When the mind is preoccupied with thoughts of what has been and what is to come, we lose connection with what is happening right before us. Dwelling on the past often leads to feelings of regret, sadness, and even resentment. We struggle to accept what has happened and endlessly wrestle with memories or decisions that cannot be altered. The enlightened, however, understand this truth. They release the weight of the past and the anxiety of the future, fully immersing themselves in the present moment. By doing so, they experience life as it truly is, vivid, immediate, and real. On the other hand, when living in the future, we are often dominated by worry and fear, concerned about things that have not yet happened and trying to control outcomes. The enlightened, in contrast, deeply understand that only the present truly exists. They do not allow themselves to be swept into the cycles of thoughts about the past or the future, but instead focus on the present moment with a mindful spirit. The core principle of living in the present. One of the core aspects of enlightenment is the recognition that the present is the only moment in which we can truly live. The past is gone. No matter how much regret or analysis we apply, it cannot be changed. The future has not arrived, and no one can predict precisely what will happen. Only the present, right now, at this very moment, is the reality we can fully experience and act upon. Philosopher Eckhart Tolle, in his book The Power of Now, emphasizes, "The present moment is all you ever have. Make the now the primary focus of your life." The enlightened understand that constantly dwelling on the past or worrying about the future is merely an illusion of the mind. By focusing on the present, they experience life more fully and completely. When you live entirely in the present, you not only become acutely aware of what is happening around you, but also develop a deep connection with yourself. You are no longer carried away by chaotic thoughts, but instead direct your full attention to every action, every breath, every sensation you are experiencing. This brings inner peace, freeing you from anxiety or regret over things that cannot be changed. Mindfulness in every experience. Living in the present does not mean merely enjoying pleasant moments or seeking short-term pleasures. It is the ability to remain mindful in every experience, whether positive or negative. The enlightened do not avoid suffering or ignore challenges. They face them directly with awareness and complete acceptance. Imagine washing dishes, a simple, mundane activity in daily life. Typically, your mind might wander to the tasks awaiting you or replay an unpleasant conversation from earlier. But if you focus entirely on the act of washing dishes, feeling the water flow over your hands, hearing the sound of the water, observing the soap bubbles, you may discover something extraordinary. You are truly alive in that moment. The same applies to other everyday actions, such as drinking tea, walking, or listening to someone speak. When you fully immerse yourself in the present, everything becomes more vivid and clear. You are no longer distracted by unrelated thoughts or emotions, but instead live wholly in the current experience. The enlightened recognize that every moment has value and offers its own lesson. They do not distinguish between big or small, important or trivial tasks, because, to them, every moment is meaningful. This mindfulness allows them to find joy and purpose even in the smallest details of life, letting go of the past and future. A crucial part of living in the present is the ability to let go of the past and not let it influence the now. The enlightened understand that regret over the past is futile. They do not deny mistakes or the lessons learned from the past, but they do not allow it to control their present lives. Instead of being trapped by memories or past events, they extract the lessons and move on. At the same time, they are not obsessed with the future. While they acknowledge its importance for planning and direction, they do not let concerns about what has not yet happened overshadow the reality of the present. By releasing the burdens of the past and future, the enlightened live freely and fully in the moment, embracing the richness of life as it unfolds. The enlightened do not deny the importance of planning or preparing for the future, but they do not let worry about the future rob them of joy and peace in the present. They understand that the future is merely the result of what is happening in the present, and the best way to build a bright future is to live fully and consciously in the now. This leads to inner freedom. When you are no longer bound by the past or anxious about the future, a sense of lightness and tranquility arises. The enlightened do not let the illusions of time control their lives. Instead, they live freely in the present, where everything truly exists. When you achieve the ability to live in the present moment, every aspect of your life transforms positively. Work becomes easier as you focus entirely on the task at hand, without being distracted by unnecessary worries. You can make clearer decisions because your mind is no longer clouded by thoughts of what has been or what might be. Your relationships with others also improve. When you are fully present, you listen to others deeply and empathetically. You no longer listen merely with your ears, but with your entire being. This creates deeper and more authentic connections with those around you. Furthermore, living in the present helps you face life's challenges and difficulties with greater equanimity. Instead of worrying about the final outcome, you focus on addressing each step as effectively as possible. You understand that regardless of the result, living fully in your actions is itself an invaluable reward. A clear yet subtle sign of enlightenment is freedom from attachment to fame, wealth, and material possessions. When one reaches enlightenment, external factors are no longer seen as measures of self-worth. They realize that happiness and inner freedom do not come from material possessions or social status, but from inner peace and spiritual liberation. To understand this sign more deeply, we must analyze the nature of these attachments, how enlightenment helps people overcome them, and the impact on life. In modern society, many people measure success and happiness through money, fame, and material goods. These elements become benchmarks for personal worth, driving powerful motivations in life. People believe that wealth will bring happiness, fame will earn them respect, and material possessions will provide security and satisfaction. However, the truth that many come to realize, especially after achieving these things, is that the happiness derived from material wealth and fame is only temporary. Once a goal is achieved, people often feel unsatisfied and immediately start longing for something bigger or better. This creates an endless loop of desire, leading to perpetual discontent. This endless craving is, in itself, a source of suffering. In Buddhist philosophy, attachment to fame and material possessions is one of the roots of desire, tanha, a primary cause of suffering. When people crave external things, they become dependent on them to define their self-worth. This leads to insecurity because money, status, and possessions are impermanent and can be lost at any time. The enlightened break free from this cycle. They recognize that true fulfillment comes not from accumulating external possessions, but from cultivating inner peace and contentment. This freedom allows them to live with a sense of liberation, unburdened by the need to chase after fleeting rewards. By letting go of attachments, they are no longer ruled by the endless pursuit of more. Instead, they focus on what truly matters, living mindfully, nurturing meaningful relationships, and finding joy in the simplicity of life. This shift in perspective brings profound peace and a deeper appreciation for life as it is. The enlightened neither reject nor criticize money, fame, or material possessions. They do not deny that these elements can contribute to improving life. However, they understand that their self-worth does not depend on what they own. They recognize that these external factors are merely temporary tools and cannot provide lasting happiness or inner peace. When enlightened, individuals let go of attachments to external things and find freedom within their own souls. They no longer make life's goal about acquiring more wealth or attaining higher status, understanding that these pursuits cannot bring long-lasting satisfaction. Instead, they focus on living a meaningful life, where their self-worth is not tied to external circumstances. The enlightened may still possess assets and use them, but they are not bound by these possessions. The key difference is that they do not see wealth, money, or status as the ultimate goal, but as means to live. They understand that everything is subject to change, and therefore they do not cling to fleeting things. An important aspect of enlightenment is the ability to enjoy life without being attached to material pleasures or fame. Instead of abandoning everything or withdrawing from the world, the enlightened continue to live in it, but they do so with mindfulness, ensuring that external factors do not dominate their minds and emotions. For instance, when an enlightened person acquires significant wealth, they do not become engrossed in pride or self-satisfaction. They do not let that wealth define their worth. They may enjoy the comforts that material possessions bring, but they do so without letting desire or greed take control. Enjoying without attachment is one of the highest states of spiritual freedom. While those who are not enlightened often worry about losing their possessions or status, the enlightened remain unbothered. They understand that everything is impermanent and that clinging to unsustainable things only leads to suffering. Thus, even while living in a material world, they maintain inner freedom and tranquility. One of the clearest signs of detachment from fame and material possessions is freedom from comparing oneself to others. In society, comparing oneself to others often leads to envy, inferiority, or conversely, pride and arrogance. People tend to feel their worth increases when they surpass others or decreases when they feel inferior. However, the enlightened do not base their self-worth on comparisons. They understand that everyone has their own journey and that striving to outdo others is meaningless. They do not envy the success of others because they no longer feel the need to prove their worth through external factors. On the contrary, the enlightened often feel joy for the success of others and are free from jealousy or resentment. They know that competition stems from the ego, and that attachment to fame or external validation only destabilizes the soul. Freedom from comparison brings them true peace and happiness. You feel peace and happiness from within. The final and perhaps most apparent sign of enlightenment is when you experience peace and happiness from within, independent of external factors. This is a state where your inner self achieves a steady tranquility, undisturbed by circumstances or the ups and downs of life. To delve deeper into this sign, we will explore the nature of happiness, the factors that hinder inner peace, and how enlightenment frees the soul from attachments to discover genuine joy and happiness from within. In everyday life, people often believe that happiness comes from external factors such as wealth, relationships, fame, or social recognition. We constantly strive for goals and achievements, hoping that acquiring these will bring satisfaction and happiness. However, real-life experience reveals that such external joys are only temporary. When you achieve something you desire, like buying a new home, landing a good job, or succeeding in your career, happiness may follow. But this feeling does not last. Soon after, dissatisfaction resurfaces, and the endless pursuit of happiness begins again. The big question is, why does external happiness not endure? The answer lies in the fact that we seek happiness in places inherently impermanent and unsustainable. All external factors, be it money, possessions, relationships, or fame, change over time. This leaves us vulnerable to feelings of loss and insecurity when these things no longer exist or fail to meet our expectations. The enlightened understand that true happiness does not depend on external conditions. Instead, it comes from within, from a serene state of mind, unaffected by the turbulence of life. They realize that genuine peace and joy arise from a mindful heart and an awakened mind, not from fleeting external circumstances. Inner peace amid life's turmoil. Enlightenment brings a steadfast inner peace that helps individuals remain grounded through life's highs and lows. When faced with failure, loss, or suffering, the enlightened do not get swept away by fear or worry. They accept things as they are and maintain their inner tranquility. For example, if an enlightened person loses a job or experiences a significant life event, they do not allow it to shake their mental state. They understand that everything in the world changes in its own cycle, and nothing lasts forever. Instead of reacting with fear or distress, they approach the situation calmly and with acceptance. This inner peace does not come from avoiding reality, but from a profound understanding of life's impermanence. A hallmark of the enlightened is their ability to maintain a calm mind even in the face of difficult circumstances. While most people may be easily unsettled by events such as financial losses, family conflicts, or health issues, the enlightened remain composed. This does not mean they are immune to hardship or devoid of emotions, but rather that they are not entirely controlled by their feelings. Responding with wisdom. In situations where others may succumb to anxiety, panic, or anger, the enlightened have the ability to turn inward, find their inner calm, and approach the matter with clarity. For instance, when confronted with a challenging situation, the enlightened pause, breathe, and reflect rather than react impulsively. This response allows them to handle difficulties with wisdom and grace, recognizing that every experience, good or bad, is part of life's journey. This profound sense of inner peace and happiness is the ultimate freedom, the freedom to live with an open heart and a steady mind, no longer reliant on external validation or fleeting pleasures. The enlightened embody this state, inspiring others to seek the same tranquility and joy from within. Not allowing fear or negative emotions to cloud clarity of thought is a fundamental aspect of enlightenment. The story of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree is a powerful illustration of this principle. While meditating beneath the tree in his quest for enlightenment, the Buddha faced temptations and fears brought forth by Mara. However, he remained unmoved, responding neither with resistance nor reaction, but simply sitting still and steadfast, grounded in inner peace. Ultimately, it was this unwavering tranquility that led him to enlightenment. This demonstrates that when the mind is no longer disturbed by external factors, we can achieve complete peace and freedom. The enlightened no longer seek happiness in the future or external conditions. Instead, they realize that true happiness lies in being fully present in the moment. When the mind is free from worries about the past or future and no longer attached to transient things, happiness arises naturally. The happiness experienced by the enlightened is not superficial joy, but a profound and serene contentment. This joy does not rely on stimulation from external sources. It emerges from complete presence in each moment. They can find happiness in the simplest of acts, drinking a cup of tea, admiring a blooming flower, or feeling the rhythm of their own breath. Thus, enlightenment is not a distant ideal reserved for saints or sages. It is something that can unfold in the everyday lives of ordinary people. Signs such as accepting reality, mastering emotions, feeling deeply connected to others in the world, living fully in the present, letting go of fame and material possessions, and discovering peace within are subtle but clear manifestations of spiritual awakening. Enlightenment is not a destination, but a continuous journey. Each day, we can take a step further along this path by living more mindfully, understanding more deeply, and observing our inner selves with sincerity. Along the way, we may not always achieve full enlightenment, but by simply acting with compassion and understanding, we begin to cultivate sustainable peace and happiness from within.